I always believed marriages broke slowly, like leaves falling one by one until bare branches stood helpless beneath winter skies. My reality proved swifter, sharper. I noticed the shift one Friday morning when she smiled at me with lips painted too carefully for an ordinary day, perfume trailing in the kitchen like an invitation meant for someone else. She called it preparation for her weekend retreat, a gathering with girlfriends, nothing remarkable. Yet the way her eyes darted from mine while she poured coffee told me more than her practiced words ever could. Her name is Evelyn. When I first met her, she radiated warmth, a woman whose laughter could unfasten chains of solitude from anyone's chest. Years later, I still found myself watching her across crowded rooms, wondering how I had been lucky enough to hold her hand at all. But affection has its blind spots, and devotion often grows deaf to warning sounds. I told myself I imagined her distance, that stress created shadows where none existed. Deep down, though, intuition scratched behind my ribs like a locked animal. That morning, I watched her fold silk blouses into her suitcase. She moved with a mixture of precision and nervous haste, as though every garment carried a secret. She avoided my gaze, choosing instead to ask questions about groceries or my work schedule. Every syllable landed with unnatural brightness, like the forced cheer of an actress on stage. I answered quietly, studying her. My wife, my Evelyn, had begun hiding behind masks, and I could almost hear them cracking as she adjusted them over her face. I reached for her wrist, stopping her mid-motion. Her pulse flickered quickly beneath my touch, betraying her calm tone. "Do you really need that many dresses for a cabin trip?" I asked softly, pretending innocence while testing her reaction. She laughed, but it rang hollow. "You know me. I overpack for everything." Yes, she did overpack, but not with cocktail dresses shimmering like city lights. I didn't press further. Confrontation would come later. Patience had always been my weapon. I let her continue, my silence a shadow hovering at the edge of her movements. The house smelled of lavender detergent and faint traces of her floral perfume. I inhaled deeply, a part of me wanting to preserve every fragment of her before truth unraveled what we had built. Our photographs lined the mantel, frozen smiles mocking the tension flooding the room. In those pictures, Evelyn leaned into me with unguarded joy. Now, she leaned away, her body angled toward escape. I remember sitting at the table, pretending to read the newspaper. My eyes, however, never left her reflection in the glass cabinet door. Watching her close the suitcase, I realized she was closing something far greater, closing off trust, loyalty, everything sacred between us. The most painful betrayal isn't when lies are spoken, it's when silence carries more truth than words ever could. Her silence roared. I swallowed bitterness rising in my throat. For years we built our home with gentle rituals, sharing wine on the porch, whispering dreams in the dark, promising forever. But that morning, every promise felt counterfeit, every whisper an echo of something already gone. As she zipped the suitcase, I whispered to myself, "This is the beginning of the end." And yet, I wasn't ready to let go. Something inside me demanded clarity, demanded confrontation. But not yet, not before I gathered every sign, every detail, every shard of evidence that the woman I adored was already gone to someone else. So, I kissed her cheek, tasted her perfume, and told her to enjoy her trip. She smiled, grateful, relieved, thinking I believed. But inside, I was already building the storm. When Evelyn's car disappeared down the street that morning, the silence left behind felt heavier than her presence. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the faint ring her coffee cup had left on the table. It reminded me of all the subtle imprints she had etched into my life, marks that once brought comfort, now burning like scars. I should have gone to work, should have distracted myself with routine, but my mind refused. Doubt spread through me like water seeping under a locked door, unstoppable, determined. The cracks in our devotion had been forming for months, though I had refused to see them. Late nights at the office, she said. Unexplained weekend errands. A sudden obsession with her phone, screen angled away whenever I walked into the room. I told myself these were small things, innocent quirks, but lies cannot disguise perfume unfamiliar to me lingering on her coat, nor laughter I overheard on the phone that carried no trace of friendship, only intimacy. I remembered a night just weeks ago when I reached for her in bed. My hand brushed her shoulder, warm beneath the sheet, yet she stiffened. Once she would have rolled into me, eager for closeness, her breath becoming mine. Instead, she turned away, whispering that she was tired. Her body language became a barrier, invisible but impenetrable. Desire remained within me, unreturned, leaving me restless beneath the same roof as the woman I loved. Every time she left the room to answer calls, I felt as though a blade slid deeper into my chest. I did not know his name, his face, his age. But I knew he existed. He lived in the pauses between her words, in the way her eyes avoided mine, in the smile she wore when reading messages she refused to share. This invisible intruder haunted my marriage, a ghost feeding on the intimacy I once believed belonged to me alone. I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Love is stubborn. It clings even when wounded. Part of me yearned to believe her, to dismiss suspicion as paranoia. Another part demanded truth, no matter how painful. Betrayal, once suspected, poisons every gesture, every silence. A text notification at midnight, and suddenly my heart thudded with dread. A new dress in the closet, and I wondered whose gaze it was meant for. Every detail became evidence, every moment a trial where I judged her actions with unrelenting suspicion. Friends asked how we were. I smiled, replied, "We're great." It was easier than confessing that the foundation beneath our life together trembled. I envied those who believed our illusion. Perhaps Evelyn envied them too, perhaps she wore her mask for herself as much as for me. One evening, after she left for yoga class, I wandered into her closet. There, buried beneath folded sweaters, I found a small velvet box. Inside rested earrings, delicate, diamond-shaped, shimmering under the lamplight. I hadn't given them to her. The realization hit me like cold water down my spine. Gifts from another man nestled among the belongings of my wife. Proof without confession. I placed the box back exactly as I found it, hands trembling. That night, when she returned, I studied her face as she kissed my cheek. The earrings dangled from her ears, glimmering against her skin. She noticed me staring, and for a moment, guilt flickered in her eyes before she laughed it away, asking if I liked them. I nodded, though my throat burned with words I dared not release. By then, devotion had cracked beyond repair, though she pretended not to see. I too played my part, waiting, gathering, enduring. Each secret she carried into the shadows only fueled the storm I prepared inside. Nights grew longer once suspicion became certainty. I would lie beside Evelyn, watching the slow rhythm of her breathing, wondering if dreams carried her to him. My fingertips hovered above her back, aching to touch, to pull her closer, yet fear stopped me. I feared she would recoil, reject me with another excuse, another reminder that our closeness had vanished. Desire remained, raw and hungry, but it no longer belonged to her alone. That realization terrified me. For the first time in years, temptation found me. Her distance created space where shadows crept in, and within those shadows, I discovered loneliness sharper than any blade. At work, I noticed glances I once ignored. A colleague brushed past me, her perfume lingering longer than necessary. An old friend messaged late at night, conversations drifting into vulnerability. These were moments I would have dismissed before, but now, deprived of intimacy, I let them linger in my thoughts. Betrayal breeds betrayal, not always in action, but in imagination. I began comparing Evelyn to the women who surrounded me. The waitress who smiled when serving coffee seemed more present than the wife who sat across from me at dinner, distracted by her phone. The neighbor's laughter felt warmer than Evelyn's silence at our breakfast table. My heart still belonged to her, but cracks widened, and temptation whispered promises of comfort my marriage no longer gave. Yet guilt held me in place. I could not betray her while suspecting betrayal. My love, wounded though it was, tethered me to restraint. I clung to hope, faint as candlelight in a storm, that maybe she would return to me, maybe this distance was temporary, maybe the earrings had another explanation. Hope is cruel. It convinces you to endure pain longer than you should. One evening, she emerged from the shower wrapped in a towel, water droplets glistening on her skin. She looked breathtaking, so familiar, yet so distant. My body ached for her, but when I reached out, she shook her head, muttering about exhaustion. Her rejection carved hollowness into my chest. I turned away, yet I couldn't stop the memory of her laughter in earlier years, when passion between us burned without hesitation. I wondered if another man now received that fire, while I lay beside embers that refused to spark. Temptation deepened through my isolation. I started walking late at night, pacing streets under amber streetlights. My mind replayed every sign, every lie, every excuse. At times, anger consumed me, fueling thoughts of revenge. Other times, sorrow crushed me, and I imagined begging her to stay, to choose me again. Between those extremes, lust whispered. It asked why I should remain faithful to a woman who no longer desired me. It suggested surrender, to touch another, to silence loneliness, to reclaim something stolen. But I resisted. I told myself the truth would reveal itself soon, and when it did, I would decide. Until then, I would not give Evelyn reason to accuse me of betrayal. I would not allow her escape. She would face me, face what she had broken. Her suitcase became the symbol of it all. Every time she pulled it from the closet, I knew she was preparing to vanish into another world, a world without me. She thought I believed her excuses, thought her mask was unshakable. But shadows betrayed her. Shadows whispered names she never spoke. And I listened. I waited. I fed the storm inside me, fueled by longing, by jealousy, by anger tangled with undying love. Temptation pressed closer, yet I held firm. Not because I was stronger, but because I wanted her confession more than I wanted relief. Soon, I promised myself, the truth would break open. And when it did, neither of us would escape unscathed. The storm I had been nurturing finally reached its edge the evening Evelyn pulled her suitcase from the closet again. I sat on the couch, watching as she laid garments across the bed with deliberate movements. Silk, lace, polished shoes. The kind no one wore on hiking trails or at lakeside cabins. Her story no longer held weight, yet she carried it with the same determined grace, rehearsed as if she were reciting lines from a script. I asked nothing at first. Silence gave me the power to study her, and every flicker of her expression told me more than words could. Her hands shook slightly while folding, though she tried to disguise it. She hummed a tune under her breath, too bright, too forced. My chest tightened, not from suspicion — suspicion had long turned to certainty — but from grief that the woman before me, the one I had once trusted above all else, now stood as a stranger in our bedroom. The suitcase gaped open, swallowing her secrets one garment at a time. I stood, walked closer, and placed my hand on the handle. She froze. Her eyes darted to mine, wide, startled, as though caught in the middle of a crime. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt like glass between us, fragile yet sharp. "Where exactly are you going this time?" My voice came quiet, steady, though inside, thunder roared. Her lips parted, ready with her usual rehearsed explanation. But something in my tone unsettled her. She hesitated, glanced down at the half-packed suitcase, then back at me. "I told you already. The retreat. You never listen." I smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, but knowingly. Strange retreat. Dresses fit for candlelit dinners, not forest cabins. Her throat worked as she swallowed. There's a restaurant nearby." "No," I interrupted, gripping the suitcase handle firmly, preventing her from closing it. "No more stories, Evelyn." Her mask cracked then, just slightly. Her shoulders slumped, her practiced cheer vanished, and raw nerves bled through her expression. The room filled with the sound of her breath, shallow, uneven. For the first time, I saw guilt written plainly across her face. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, though her trembling voice betrayed her. I leaned closer, my words pressing into the silence. "I know. The phone calls. The perfume. The earrings you didn't buy yourself. The late nights. I know, Evelyn." She staggered backward, sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes glistening. Tears brimmed but refused to fall. Her fingers twisted in her lap, restless, searching for excuses she could no longer sustain. The suitcase remained between us, no longer just luggage. It became evidence, confession, the very weight of her betrayal made tangible. I touched the zipper slowly, pulling it closed halfway, listening to its metallic rasp echo through the room. It felt like sealing a coffin. Finally, her voice broke. "Please don't." The words weren't denial, they were surrender. She pressed her face into her hands, shoulders trembling. For the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to break. I should have felt triumph. Proof had been delivered without further searching. Yet instead, sorrow consumed me. Watching her crumble, I saw not just a betrayer, but the woman I had once adored, torn apart by her own choices. I wanted to rage, to scream, to demand his name. But I only stood there, silent, watching her shatter. Love makes fools of us all. Even as anger burned, desire for her lingered, twisting the knife deeper. The suitcase sat between us, heavy with unspoken truth. She had packed for an escape, but now there was no leaving. Not tonight. Not until everything hidden spilled out into the open. And so, I whispered, steady but final, "Tell me, Evelyn. Tell me everything." Her sobs filled the room, muffled at first, then rising with each uneven breath. I had waited for this moment, imagining how it would feel when truth finally surfaced. I thought anger would consume me, thought I would demand every sordid detail, thought I would strike her with words sharp enough to wound her as deeply as she wounded me. But when Evelyn broke, when tears stained her cheeks and her hands covered her trembling mouth, what I felt instead was grief so profound it hollowed me from the inside out. She tried to speak, words tangled between sobs. I never meant," her voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I stayed silent, letting her confession unfold in fragments. She lifted her eyes toward me, swollen with guilt, shimmering with fear. In that moment I saw the girl I once met years ago, the girl who laughed at my clumsy jokes, who pressed her forehead against mine under starlight, who whispered promises she now betrayed. That memory twisted inside me, fighting against the rage clawing to be released. "It started months ago," she whispered, voice trembling. "I felt invisible, like we had drifted apart. He noticed me." Her words sliced through me. Invisible? I had worshipped her, studied every expression, memorized every curve of her smile. Yet she claimed she was unseen. Betrayal often wears the disguise of need, but knowing her reasoning did nothing to soothe the wound. It only deepened it. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice sharper than intended. She shook her head, covering her face again. "Don't ask me that. It doesn't matter. It's over, I swear." But it did matter. His shadow lingered in our home, in her laughter, in every perfume-soaked lie. I wanted to tear his identity from her, wanted to confront him, strip away whatever power he held. Yet I couldn't speak his question again. I feared the finality of hearing his name. "I love you," she whispered suddenly, desperately, as though the words could erase everything. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Her hands hovered in the air, trembling, rejected. The distance between us widened, an abyss impossible to cross. "Love," I finally said. My chest burned with bitterness. "Is this what love looks like, Evelyn? Secret calls in the night, new dresses hidden in closets, earrings from another man?" Her tears streamed faster. She fell forward, clutching the edge of the bed as if it could hold her upright. "I made a mistake. I didn't know how to stop. But it's you I want. It's always been you." Her words throbbed with contradiction. Always me, yet not me. I wanted to believe her, wanted to let those words soothe me, but images of her with him intruded, smiles, touches, stolen kisses. My imagination painted every betrayal in colors too vivid to ignore. Anger finally surged, raw and violent. "You've destroyed us," I said, each syllable deliberate. "You've destroyed me." She collapsed into sobs again, curling onto the bed, shaking uncontrollably. My fury softened against my will, watching her unravel. I hated myself for it, hated how even in betrayal, her fragility could stir compassion within me. Desire flickered too, cruel and uninvited, reminding me that my body still ached for her even as my heart shattered. I turned away, pacing the room, fists clenched. The suitcase remained on the floor, forgotten, useless now. She wouldn't be leaving for any retreat. Tonight, she had to face what she had built, what she had broken. When I finally looked back, she met my gaze, eyes red but unwavering. "Please, don't give up on me." Her plea lodged in my chest, heavy as stone. I stood at the crossroads of fury and longing, uncertain which path to take. All I knew was that nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. The house was unbearably quiet after her sobs softened into silence. She sat on the bed, head lowered, shoulders slumped, looking more like a defeated child than the confident woman I had known. I stood near the window, staring at the darkness outside, where raindrops streaked across the glass. Storm clouds hung over the neighborhood, as if nature mirrored the chaos inside me. I wanted answers, every detail, every reason, but I also dreaded them. Some truths, once spoken, cannot be unheard. I already saw enough in her eyes: shame, guilt, desire tangled with regret. Confession didn't free me, it chained me to questions with no endings. She whispered again, voice fragile, "I love you. I'll end it. Just give me another chance." The words drifted between us like dying embers. My chest tightened, torn between fury and longing. My love for her hadn't disappeared, not even after her betrayal. That was the cruelest part. My heart still reached for her, even while my mind screamed for escape. Desire pulsed faintly, uninvited, because my body remembered her as mine. But could I ever touch her again without seeing him in the shadows? Could I ever kiss her lips without imagining who else had tasted them? I turned from the window, studying her carefully. Her hands twisted together, knuckles white, waiting for my judgment. 4 years, she had been the center of my world. Now she waited like a criminal before her executioner. "Why him?" I asked finally, voice raw. She flinched. "Because I was lonely. Because you were distant, buried in work, in silence." He looked at me like I mattered. I was weak. "I'm sorry." Her excuse sliced deeper than honesty. I gave her everything, and yet she craved more, craved someone else. Weakness, she called it. But weakness, when nurtured, becomes choice. And choices destroy. I sank into the chair across from her, exhausted. My anger had burned hot, but now it cooled into something heavier: resignation. "Do you realize what you've done? You've poisoned us. Every kiss, every touch, every memory, now they're tainted. Even if I forgive, I'll never forget." Her tears returned, but she didn't argue. She knew I spoke truth. The suitcase still sat open, garments spilling out like evidence. She stared at it, then whispered, "I'll unpack it. I'll stay." The irony struck me. She had packed to leave, but it wasn't just clothes she had been preparing to abandon. She had been ready to abandon me, us, the life we built. And now she promised to stay, as if that single choice could rebuild shattered trust. I closed my eyes, recalling the nights we spent laughing, the mornings we woke tangled in each other's warmth, the vows whispered under candlelight. Those memories still lived in me, but now they stood beside images of betrayal. Love and pain braided together, impossible to separate. When I opened my eyes, she was watching me, desperate, waiting for salvation I wasn't sure I could give. I rose slowly, stepping closer. My hand brushed her cheek, wiping a tear. She leaned into the touch, eyes closing, as if my forgiveness rested there. But forgiveness is not a touch. It is a mountain, and we stood only at its base. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted, voice trembling. But I can't stop loving you either. That's my curse. She broke again, pressing her face into my chest, sobbing. I wrapped my arms around her, not out of resolution, but out of instinct. My heart, foolish and wounded, still recognized her as mine, even if she had betrayed that claim. The suitcase remained by the bed, unopened now, yet still heavy with meaning. She would not be leaving tonight. But neither of us knew if staying would heal us or destroy us further. As the storm raged outside, I realized our story hadn't ended. It had only changed. Trust was broken, but love, stubborn, aching, lingering, refused to die. Whether it would save us or doom us, I could not yet know. All I knew was this: the woman in my arms was both my greatest love and my deepest wound. And that paradox would define every tomorrow we faced.